The cold void of space made even the toughest feel small. But for the Deathworlders, it was just another battlefield. They were humans forged on brutal worlds where survival wasn't a skill. It was a way of life. When the SOS signal flashed on the ship's console, Commander Jack Harrow didn't feel sympathy. Instead, suspicion and cold calculation settled over him. Aliens rarely sent distress calls for kindness, especially near the Korgath Rift, a deadly nebula where ships were shredded and swallowed whole. Jack stood rigid on the bridge, eyes scanning the dark haze ahead. He'd fought more battles than he cared to count, and every time he reminded his crew that mercy was a weakness they couldn't afford. The SOS came from a fleet trapped in the rift, engines dying fast. The species was unknown, their life signs faint and fragile compared to Deathworlders' hardiness. Tactical reports their ships are crippled, barely holding together, said Lieutenant Reyna, his tactical officer. Unknown species, but they sent the SOS using standard procedure. Investigate, prep boarding teams, but stay ready for a fight, Jax ordered. His voice was calm, sharp as a blade. We don't rescue victims here. We extract info, neutralize threats. The ship cut through the rift's ionized storms, sensors flickering. Then, through the haze, appeared the crippled fleet. Sleek, fragile ships limping through space. Their SOS beacon blinked relentlessly, a desperate plea lost in the darkness. Closing in, Jax felt the familiar surge, the thrill of the hunt, the weight of impending violence. These aliens wanted help, but not the kind humans gave. Their weakness was an invitation for death. Open a channel, he commanded. Static, then a trembling voice. Help, please. We're trapped. Our engines failed in the rift. We beg for aid. Jax's lips twitched into a cold smile. Help is costly. What's your offer? The alien faltered. Anything. Our technology. Knowledge. We only want to live. His crew exchanged uneasy looks. Something was off. But that was the kind of trap Deathworlders thrived on. Send your coordinates. Boarding teams ready, Jack said. As Deathworlders launched their pods, the alien ship's shields flared to life, weapons charging fast. Ambush, Rena shouted as plasma fire tore through space. But Deathworlders were bred for this. Fights where death was certain, and mercy was a lie. Jax led the boarding assault, slicing through panicked aliens with ruthless efficiency. They had no clue who they'd baited. What do you want? Jax growled, grabbing the trembling alien commander on the bridge. We only asked for help. We didn't mean to trap you. The alien stammered. Help? You sent an SOS to lure us into a trap. You thought Deathworlders were easy prey. You'll regret that. One by one, the alien ships fell silent as Jax's warriors tore through their ranks. The rift seemed to howl around them, but the Deathworlders didn't stop until every last vessel was dead or disabled. When it ended, Jax stood in the wreckage on his bridge, staring at the stars beyond. The SOS that should have been a plea for mercy had become a declaration of war, and now the galaxy knew why Deathworlders were feared most. Report, Jax said quietly. Fleet destroyed. No survivors, no intel recovered. They underestimated us, Commander. Jax nodded, already thinking about the next call, the next trap, the next battle. Deathworlders didn't just survive. They made sure their enemies never forgot. Jax watched the wreckage drift away, cold stars lighting the silent tomb of the alien fleet. The rift's eerie glow faded behind them as their ship powered out of the nebula's grip. His crew moved with quiet efficiency, but beneath the calm was a tension Jax felt deep in his bones. They'd barely scratched the surface. The SOS had been a trap, yes, but why lure Deathworlders here? What was the bigger game, Commander? Rena approached, her voice low. Scanners picked up a faint transmission buried in the wreckage debris. It's encrypted, but it's definitely alien tech. Jax narrowed his eyes. Bring it up. Let's see what secrets these fools were hiding. On the bridge, the cryptic transmission flickered onto the main screen. It wasn't a distress call, more like a coded message sent out right before the fleet's destruction. The language was strange, but had patterns Jax recognized from ancient alien conflicts. A warning maybe, or a call for reinforcements. Looks like they weren't just trapped, Jax muttered. They were bait. We walked right into their snare. His crew tensed. The thought of a larger alien force waiting in the shadows was unsettling, but Jax's mind sharpened. If this was a trap, they had to turn it around. Humans, especially Deathworlders, never backed down from a fight. They didn't run. They didn't hide. They hit back harder. Prepare for possible retaliation, Jax said. Scan the area for any signs of that fleet's backup. If they're out there waiting for us, we'll be ready. As the ship cruised through the void, Jax took a moment to stare out the viewport. Deathworlders were the galaxy's nightmare for a reason. They were relentless, brutal, and unforgiving. But Jax knew this was no ordinary enemy. Whatever had sent that SOS wanted more than to die quietly. They wanted a war. Commander, the comms officer interrupted. New signal detected, highly encrypted, coming from deep inside the rift. Jax's jaw tightened. Put it on screen. The image that appeared was unlike anything they'd seen before. An alien commander, battered but defiant, transmitting a message directly to them. You've destroyed our fleet, Deathworlders, the alien said with bitter fury. But the war is just beginning. You've made powerful enemies. Jax's fingers clenched into a fist. Then let them come. The warning was clear. The SOS had been a test, a way to measure the Deathworlder's strength. Now the galaxy was watching, and Jax was ready to make sure every enemy who underestimated humanity paid dearly. Rally the crew, he said. We're not just survivors. We are hunters, and this fight has only just started. The warning from the alien commander echoed in Jax's mind like a dark drumbeat. The destruction of their fleet hadn't been the end. It was only the beginning. The Deathworlders were infamous across the stars for their brutal survival instincts. But Jax knew that no one, no matter how fierce, could take on an entire alien armada without consequences. Yet backing down was never an option. That was not how Deathworlders operated. On the bridge, the crew was tense but focused. The ship's systems hummed steadily as they scanned the void for signs of the alien reinforcements. Jax paced slowly, eyes locked on the flickering displays. He could feel the weight of every decision, every movement. Because this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was a war for respect, for dominance, for humanity's place in the galaxy. Lieutenant Rena, Jax called. Any sign of their backup fleet? Rena's fingers danced over the controls. Nothing concrete yet, Commander. The rift's interference is strong, but I'm pushing the sensors as far as I can. If they're out there, they're hiding well. Then we'll find them, Jax said, voice low but firm. We always do. The alien's message was a challenge, a promise of vengeance. But Jax's mind worked differently. For him, every battle was a puzzle, and every enemy had a weakness waiting to be uncovered. The Deathworlders weren't just warriors. They were survivors who thrived on turning traps into kills. Gather the senior officers, Jax ordered. We're planning our next move. In the strategy room, holographic maps of the Korgath Rift flickered in midair. The nebula was a chaotic mess of swirling gases and unpredictable energy storms. A perfect place for ambushes, but also a deadly maze for any fleet to navigate. Here's where their fleet was crippled. Rena pointed to a glowing cluster on the map. If their reinforcements are coming, they'll use this rift to their advantage. Hiding in the storms, using the interference to mask their approach. Jax nodded. We can't let them catch us off guard again. We'll use their terrain against them, set traps, false signals. Let them think they're hunting while we're the real predators. The officers exchanged looks, knowing the risks. The rift wasn't just dangerous because of enemies. It was a graveyard of ships that had vanished without a trace. But Deathworlders didn't fear death. They welcomed it as part of the game. As preparations began, Jax retreated to his quarters briefly, feeling the rare weight of exhaustion. A small hologram of his homeworld blinked softly on the table, a harsh, rocky planet where life had forced its inhabitants into warriors. He touched the image, a reminder of why he fought so fiercely. The galaxy wasn't kind to Deathworlders, but it was their home. Their survival was their defiance. The comms officer broke his thoughts. Commander, incoming message. Unknown origin. Urgent. Jax returned to the bridge and activated the screen. This time, the message wasn't a warning or a plea. It was a direct threat. Deathworlders, the new alien voice hissed, cold, and filled with menace. You've made a grave mistake. Our empire will consume your worlds, and your blood will stain the stars. Jax stared at the screen, feeling the fire inside him ignite. Then let them try, he said quietly. They'll learn what it means to fight Deathworlders. Over the next hours, the crew worked tirelessly, reinforcing defenses, running simulations, and preparing for the inevitable clash. Jax moved among them, steady and unyielding, a leader who knew that fear was a luxury his people couldn't afford. As the ship held its course through the stars, the Korgath rift loomed ahead like a beast waiting to strike. But Jax wasn't just ready. He was hungry for the fight. The galaxy had sent the SOS to trap them, but Deathworlders had turned that trap into a war cry, and soon the hunters would become the hunted. The tension on the ship was palpable as the Deathworlders edged closer to the heart of the Korgath rift. Every crew member knew what was coming. Jax could feel it too. The oppressive weight of the unknown. The silent threat lurking just beyond their sensors. This wasn't just a mission anymore. It was survival on a scale none of them had ever faced before. Jax stood on the bridge, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the swirling storm ahead. The rift's colors shifted unnaturally. Acid greens mixed with fiery reds and deep purples. Space here wasn't empty. It was alive, chaotic, dangerous. It hid more than just debris. It hid killers, scanners picking up faint energy signatures. Multiple fast-moving ships. Rena reported, her voice tense but controlled. They're using the nebula to mask their approach, but they're closing in. Jax nodded, already calculating their options. Raise shields to maximum. Divert all power to weapons and engines. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Commander, the comms officer interrupted. They're broadcasting a message. This time, it's a surrender demand. Jax raised an eyebrow. Put it on screen. The alien commander's face appeared again, grim and unreadable. Deathworlders, you have no chance. Surrender now, and we will spare your crew and your ship. Jax's lips curled into a grim smile. Spare us. You don't understand, Deathworlders. We don't surrender. We don't negotiate. We fight, and we win. The alien's expression hardened. Then prepare to be destroyed. Almost immediately, the rift erupted into chaos. Alien ships surged forward from the shadows, plasma bolts streaking through the swirling gases, lighting up the darkness with deadly precision. The battle was on. Jax barked orders like a seasoned warlord. Return fire. Target the closest ships. Keep formation tight. Launch fighters. The bridge was a flurry of activity, but Jax's calm voice cut through the storm. He knew the rift better than anyone. It was their weapon as much as it was their battleground. The swirling energy storms disrupted sensors and weapons, but it also gave them chances to slip away and strike from unexpected angles. Evasive patterns Alpha and Beta, he ordered, watching their ship twist and dive through the chaos. Use the nebula to blind their targeting systems. The alien fleet struggled to adapt. Their sleek ships were fast but fragile compared to the rugged Deathworlder vessels built to take punishment. One by one, alien ships exploded in brilliant bursts of fire, swallowed by the nebula's unforgiving clouds. Jax led a squadron of fighters into the fray himself, his hands steady on the controls. He thrived in these moments when skill, instinct, and sheer willpower met the chaos of battle. Every shot he fired was precise, every maneuver calculated. Target down, his wingman called out as an alien fighter spiraled out of control. Another two closing in on us. Engage aggressively, don't give them breathing room, Jax responded. We end this fast. But the enemy was relentless. They fought with desperation and fury. Their attacks coordinated and vicious. Jax realized quickly this wasn't just about survival for them. It was revenge. Every damaged ship, every lost comrade fueled their rage. The battle raged for hours. Deathworlder ships took hits, and fighters fell. But the human side pressed on with relentless determination. Jax could feel the tide turning. The aliens, though fierce, lacked the Deathworlders' brutal endurance and cold calculation. At the climax, Jax ordered a risky maneuver, leading his flagship directly into the thick of the enemy fleet to break their formation. Brace for impact, he warned his crew. The ship shook violently as plasma fires slammed into their shields, but the Deathworlders held their ground. Jax directed a concentrated barrage at the alien command ship, the heart of their fleet. The command ship's hull cracked and splintered under the assault. With a final deafening explosion, it erupted in a blaze that lit the nebula's swirling gases like a supernova. With their leader destroyed, the alien fleet faltered. Ships broke formation, retreating into the shadows of the rift. Jax's crew cheered, but he didn't celebrate. There was no joy in victory when the war was far from over. Back on the bridge, Jax's eyes burned with fierce resolve. We showed them what Deathworlders are made of. They came to kill us, and they lost. But this fight isn't over. They'll come back, and when they do, we'll be ready. The crew nodded, their faces a mix of exhaustion and pride. They had survived the impossible once again. But Jax knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy was watching now, and humanity's fiercest warriors were ready to write their legend in blood. The victory over the alien fleet felt hollow to Jax. On the surface, they had won decisively. Their enemies scattered, their command ship reduced to nothing more than a drifting wreck in the nebula. But beneath that victory lay the bitter truth. The war was far from over. The alien empire that had dared to challenge the Deathworlders was still out there, and their hatred now burned hotter than ever. Jax stood on the bridge, the stars streaking past as their ship moved away from the Korgeth rift. The silence that followed the battle was heavy. The crew busied themselves with repairs and medical checks, but the tension lingered. Everyone knew this was only the opening act. Commander, Lieutenant Rena said quietly, "We've been intercepting enemy chatter. Their empire is mobilizing a massive fleet, far larger than the one we just fought." Jax's eyes narrowed. How long until they arrive? Too soon. Weeks, maybe days. A low growl escaped Jax's throat. The galaxy wasn't going to let this go easily. Their enemies wanted to crush the Deathworlders before they could become a true threat. But Jax wasn't about to let that happen. "We need allies," he said. "If we face that many ships alone, we'll be overwhelmed. Send out discreet communications to the coalition worlds. Tell them what's coming." Rena nodded. Understood. The Deathworlders had always been a solitary force, proud, brutal, and fiercely independent. But even they knew when the stakes were this high. Survival required strength in numbers. Jax wasn't fond of asking for help. But this wasn't just about pride. It was about survival. As the crew scrambled to prepare for the incoming storm, Jax retreated to the command deck. His mind racing, he replayed the alien commander's words, the warning filled with venom and certainty. The Empire's arrogance was their weakness. But underestimating the Deathworlders had been their first mistake. Now Jax intended to make sure they paid for it. A sudden alert broke his focus. The ship's sensors picked up a faint signal from deep within the rift. A small shuttle, damaged but still active. Jack's brow furrowed. Send a boarding party. Let's see who's still alive. Minutes later, the shuttle docked, and the team brought aboard a single survivor, a female alien, her eyes weary but intelligent. She was a far cry from the desperate cries they'd heard before. Instead, there was something sharper in her gaze, a glimmer of defiance. "Who are you?" Jax asked, stepping forward. "My name is Laura," she said, her voice steady despite exhaustion. "I am a scout from the empire you destroyed, but I bring a warning and an offer." Jax raised an eyebrow. "A warning, sure, but why should we trust you? Your people tried to trap us." Laura's eyes hardened. "Because the Empire's leaders are blind to the threat you pose. They want war, I want peace. We can help each other survive." The room fell silent. Jax's crew exchanged skeptical glances. The idea of an alliance with their sworn enemies was unthinkable, but Jax was a pragmatist. If this peace offered even a chance to buy time to prepare, it was worth listening. "Speak," Jax said. Laura explained the Empire's internal politics, a divided leadership, factions hungry for power, and a reckless emperor eager to crush any opposition. She revealed that many in her world feared the coming war as much as the Deathworlders did. "But why come to us?" Jax pressed. "Because," Laura said, "you are the only one strong enough to stand against the Empire. Together, we might survive. Apart, we will both be destroyed." Jax studied her for a long moment. Trust was a rare currency in war, but so was survival. He made his decision. "We'll hear your offer. But know this, we won't be anyone's pawns." Laura nodded. "I wouldn't ask if I didn't believe it could work." As the crew prepared for the uncertain days ahead, Jax felt the familiar fire rekindle inside him. The fight wasn't just about power or pride anymore. It was about forging a future in a galaxy that wanted to see them dead. And Deathworlders didn't just survive. They adapted. They conquered. They endured. The alliance with Laura was fragile, like glass stretched thin over a widening chasm. Jax knew this was a gamble. Trusting a sworn enemy, even one claiming to seek peace, was dangerous, maybe deadly, but the storm coming was bigger than any one fleet, any one species. The Empire's wrath was rising like a tidal wave. And if Deathworlders wanted to survive, they had to ride it together. In the command center, Jax and Laura pored over star charts and intercepted communications. The Empire's massive fleet was gathering beyond known space. Armadas that dwarfed anything Jax had ever faced. Their engines thrummed with lethal promise, ready to tear through the stars. "The Emperor's War Council is divided," Laura explained. "Some want to crush you outright. Others fear the cost. We need to exploit that division." Jax nodded slowly. "Divide and conquer. Inside their ranks while we prepare outside." Laura's eyes flickered with a rare warmth. "Exactly. I can help you send false intel. Sow distrust." Jax looked at his crew, their faces a mix of suspicion and grim resolve. Many hated the idea of working with an alien who had once tried to kill them, but they listened because the alternative was extinction. Days turned into weeks. The Deathworlders and Laura's small contingent worked tirelessly. False transmissions leaked into the Empire's networks, revealing fake plans and sowing paranoia among the Emperor's generals. Jax watched the enemy's communications crackle with confusion. The rift was becoming a trap, this time for the Empire. Meanwhile, the Deathworlders fortified their positions. Ships were repaired, weapons upgraded, and battle drills ran day and night. Jax pushed his crew hard. Failure wasn't an option. One evening, as the ship drifted near a gas giant, Jax stood alone on the observation deck. The planet's swirling storms mirrored the chaos in his mind. He thought of his home world, the savage land that had made him what he was. Survival there had been a lesson in pain and resilience. That spirit was why Deathworlders didn't just live. They thrived. The ship's alarm shattered the quiet. "Commander, multiple enemy signatures approaching fast." Jack straightened. "Battle stations. This is it." The enemy fleet burst from the darkness. Massive warships cutting through space like knives. Their numbers were overwhelming, but Jax wasn't afraid. His crew was ready. The battle was brutal. Plasma fire lit up the void as ships clashed. Engines screamed under strain, and fighters tore through enemy ranks. Jax led from the front, coordinating strikes, calling maneuvers, and pushing his crew beyond exhaustion. In the midst of chaos, Laura fought alongside them, her alien weapons unfamiliar but deadly in skilled hands. Jax's respect for her grew, not as an enemy, but as an ally forged in fire. Hours passed like minutes. Slowly, the tide turned. The Empire's fleet faltered, confused and battered by the Deathworlders' relentless assault and the false intelligence that had shattered their coordination. When the last enemy ship fled or exploded, a heavy silence settled. The Deathworlders had survived again, but Jax knew the war was far from over. Back on the bridge, he met Laura's eyes. "This victory is ours for now, but we've only delayed the inevitable." She nodded. "The Emperor won't stop. He'll send more. We need to strike deeper into his territory." Jack's jaw tightened. "Then we prepare for war, for survival, for everything we've ever fought for." The fragile alliance had proven its worth. But the real test lay ahead. Deathworlders were born to fight, but even they couldn't fight alone forever. And as the stars gleamed cold outside, Jax vowed to lead his people through the darkness, no matter the cost. The war had dragged on longer than anyone had dared imagine. The fragile alliance between the Deathworlders and Laura's faction had saved them from destruction time and again, but it had also exposed every crack in their armor, every doubt, every hesitation. Jack stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Iron Vengeance, staring out at the stars that seemed colder and more distant than ever before. This final battle was coming, and it would decide the fate of everything they fought for. The massive alien empire had thrown everything they had at the Deathworlders and their allies. Fleets clashed like thunder in the void. Planets turned to ash, and billions lived in fear. Jax had seen friends die, seen entire squadrons wiped out in the blink of an eye. But surrender was never a choice. It never would be. "Commander," Rena reported, breaking his grim reverie. "The enemy fleet has been detected near the Vega system. They're mobilizing for a full-scale assault. This is their last push." Jax's eyes burned with fierce determination. "All hands, prepare for battle. This fight ends here. One way or another." The Iron Vengeance surged forward, slicing through space like a blade. Around them, Allied ships formed a protective ring, shields shimmering under the alien fire that came crashing down like meteor storms. Explosions lit the darkness as fighters darted through enemy ranks, desperate and deadly. Jax's voice echoed across the comm channels. "Hold the line. Protect the carriers at all costs. Focus fire on the enemy command ship." The battle was chaos incarnate. Plasma bolts tore through the void. Engines screamed in fury, and ships exploded in bright blossoms of fire. Jax's heart pounded as he coordinated maneuvers and called for reinforcements. The enemy was relentless, but so were the Deathworlders. Suddenly, a shadow slipped through the comms. An encrypted message from Laura. "Commander, the Emperor has deployed his secret weapon. It's heading your way." Jax's blood ran cold. What kind of weapon? Unknown, but it's unlike anything we've seen. It's designed to annihilate entire fleets in seconds. The Iron Vengeance shuddered violently as the first strikes hit their shields. The secret weapon was close. "Divert all power to forward shields. Get us out of the path of that weapon," Jax ordered. But it was too late. A pulse of energy blasted through space. A wave of destruction so intense that it tore ships apart like paper. The enemy's secret weapon was real, and it was devastating. The battle turned desperate. Ships were lost in seconds, and retreat became impossible. Jax gritted his teeth, refusing to let despair take hold. Focus on evasive maneuvers. Target the weapon source. We can't let this thing keep firing, he commanded. The Iron Vengeance surged toward the enemy's flagship, weaving through debris and fire. Jax's crew fought with every ounce of strength they had, but the price was high. Around him, ships went dark one by one. Lieutenant Rena, any luck on targeting? Rena's fingers flew over the controls. I'm locking on the weapon's core. It's vulnerable, but heavily shielded. Then punch through those shields. We hit it hard, or we all die here. The final assault was brutal and reckless. The Iron Vengeance unleashed everything it had, concentrating firepower on the enemy's flagship. The secret weapon flared, desperate to protect its master, but Jax's team pushed through. With a roar that shook the ship, the enemy flagship exploded, sending a shock wave rippling through the battlefield. The secret weapon's pulse ceased. Silence followed. Jax exhaled slowly, voice quiet but triumphant. We did it. The fleet's breaking apart. The enemy began to retreat, their massive force scattering like frightened prey. The Deathworlders and their allies had won, but at a terrible cost. On the bridge, Jax looked around at the weary faces of his crew. They had survived the impossible. They had made the galaxy respect the Deathworlders once again, but he knew peace would not come easily. Set course for home, Jax said quietly. We've earned a moment's rest, but stay ready. This war has changed us, and it's far from over. Vra approached him, her eyes tired but resolute. You led them well, Jax. The Empire won't forget this day. He nodded, feeling the weight of leadership settle heavily on his shoulders. Neither will we, but we fight on because Deathworlders don't quit. We don't surrender, we survive. Outside the viewport, the stars burned cold and bright, the endless battlefield of a galaxy that would never rest. And somewhere in that darkness, humanity's fiercest warriors were ready to face whatever came next. The war had stretched to its breaking point. Years of relentless fighting, bitter loss, and narrow victories had carved deep scars into the souls of every Deathworlder aboard the Iron Vengeance. Commander Jax Harrow stood alone on the observation deck, staring into the abyss of stars outside, silent witnesses to a war that had reshaped the galaxy. His reflection in the glass was ghastly, a man hardened by battles yet haunted by what the future still demanded. They had just survived the most brutal clash of their lives, the final battle near the Vega system where the Empire unleashed their secret weapon, a force capable of erasing entire fleets in a pulse of devastating energy. That weapon's destruction had cost them dearly. Countless ships, thousands of lives sacrificed to shatter the Empire's grip and force them into retreat. But survival came with no guarantees, no celebrations. The war was over, but peace was a fragile ghost. Jax's mind wandered back to the alliance with Lyra, the alien scout who had stepped forward amidst the chaos and offered a lifeline. It was a gamble that had saved them, but it also raised questions deeper than any battlefield strategy. Could they truly trust their former enemies? Could such fragile bonds hold when the Empire's dark shadows still lingered? Commander. A voice broke through his thoughts. It was Rena, her expression somber but steady. The fleet is preparing to move to safe zones for repairs and regrouping. Casualty reports are grim. We've lost more than a third of our strength. Jax nodded, swallowing the ache that threatened to consume him. We've survived worse. But this war has changed everything. The galaxy won't forget what we've done here. Behind them, the stars shifted in slow dance, distant suns burning in silent judgment. The Deathworlders had proven their might, but victory was never permanent. The Empire they fought was fractured, yes, but still vast and brutal. Others would rise to take its place, and humanity, especially those bred on harsh death worlds, would have to remain vigilant. Sir, Rena continued, Ra requests a meeting. She says there are developments within the Empire's ranks we need to discuss. Jax gave a curt nod. Send her to my quarters. Minutes later, Ra entered, her posture proud but weary. Commander, the Empire's leadership is fracturing. Our Emperor's reckless war has sparked rebellion among his own generals. There are factions willing to negotiate, others bent on destruction. The question is, which side will win? Jack studied her carefully. And which side do you belong to? I want an end to this bloodshed, she said quietly. But I also want my people to survive. Sometimes that means making hard choices. The weight of her words wasn't lost on Jax. War was never black and white. It was a brutal spectrum of survival and sacrifice. And now their fragile alliance faced its greatest test. Could enemies become partners? Could hatred be replaced with something stronger? We've earned a moment to rebuild, Jax said, but we must be ready. The next phase will be a war of politics and betrayal as much as firepower. Ra nodded. Agreed. I'll work to unite the factions willing to negotiate. You prepare your people for whatever comes. The days that followed were a mix of exhaustion and renewal. The Deathworlders repaired their ships, mourned their dead, and trained their warriors. Jax moved among them, a steady hand in a sea of uncertainty. They were battle-hardened, yes, but they were also human. They carried the weight of loss and hope in equal measure. One evening, as the stars burned cold outside, Jax sat with Laura on the observation deck. Silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, but heavy with unspoken understanding. The war had changed them all, but perhaps, in that change, there was hope for something new. A galaxy where Deathworlders and their former enemies could forge a peace stronger than any weapon. The path ahead would not be easy. There would be more battles, more sacrifices. But for now, in this moment of hard-won peace, they allowed themselves to believe in a future worth fighting for. A future where survival wasn't just about strength, but about building something that would endure long after the fires of war had faded into memory.